Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. I'm Greg Christ, your host of the show. We welcome you in. We hope that you'll enjoy the show tonight. We have a great show on tap for you, as always. I'm not going to give it all away, but we are going to go back to the Bobby Bowden era on the football side of things. We have the son of a coach that coached with Coach Bowden, and he's going to join us live on the air. We also will have Bob Zatelli, who will be joining us, who was a player back in that era, as well as our old friend Mickey Plumley, who's trying to get in. He's having a little bit of audio difficulties, but we hope Mickey can join us here shortly. So we'll hope that we can get Mickey on the show also. And of course, we'll be talking basketball with our resident expert, Darryl Prue. We want to talk some hoops, and we'll get that started here in just a minute. But first, I want to remind everyone, make sure when you go onto YouTube, make sure you give us a like and a subscribe on our channel. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, but it helps us out a great deal when you do subscribe. And if you are a regular viewer, make sure you let everybody know that they can go on and like and subscribe, watch the show on YouTube. That helps us a great deal. Again, we have a good show for you. We hope you'll kick back and enjoy it. And we're going to get started right now with a little basketball talk, and we're going to bring Darryl Prue onto the stage. And Darryl, we appreciate, as always, you being here with us. You're pretty much a regular here on the show. We're here to talk some basketball, and I know, we all watch the games and we all see what's going on. The last game, of course, was the Oklahoma State game. Seems like we're getting into a rut of playing well, playing poorly. And I think, the big problem we're having right now is playing on the road. We're not able to win on the road. And, that showed up again this past week. And we had a real shot. I mean, we had a real chance. We were winning the whole game and lost in the last 5 minutes, I guess. Went scoreless there for a long dry spell. Did us in. Close game, but a game we should have won.
Yeah, it's the inconsistency of the whole thing, the whole program.
Yep. Yeah.
It started with the release of Bob Huggins, and everything's been inconsistent.
Yep, just been sort of a downhill spiral, I guess.
Yeah, it just carried over to the season. He's not doing a bad job, but it's just hard trying to put these pieces together, and it carried over to the season. Guys wasn't playing at the beginning of the year, and now they playing, and you get Jesse Edwards hurt. You try to get him back in, and the guys have been inconsistent. Because the more they play, the more scouting reports now you see all their defeats. Right. So it's just then it's people who you think are reliable not being reliable, and it's just it's just a tough situation. They keep fighting, they end games, which is a good thing. Hopefully at the end some of these games they lose and they'll come back and win them.
Yeah. Well, and you talk, you mentioned the inconsistencies, and one person that sticks out in my mind is Raquan Battle. He's our scorer, our go-to guy. Last couple of games have been a real struggle. He got ejected the other night. He went, he was like one time 1 for 7 from the floor. I think he ended up with 2 points on the night. First 4 or 5 games he scored 21, 22 a game. That's the inconsistency we're talking about. Of course, from a coach's perspective, and I know you've coached plenty and watched plenty of basketball. It's always not always the points that matter. I see players in the West Virginia Conference I go watch every week. I see players down in I don't even know what conference they're in now, but my son coaches at University of Pikeville. I see players in that league as well who are good scorers, but they're poor defenders. And when you don't have complete players that play it on both ends of the floor, consistency becomes a real issue, because you got other players that are out there with them and they suffer because of it. And as a coach, you're there. Okay, do I take him out? He's our main scorer, but he won't play defense. What do I do here? And I just think that's a big part of the inconsistency that we're seeing. It's an effort on both sides, both ends of the floor, and I think that's a big problem.
Yeah, you got these guys, they're coming from different levels, and Raquan Battle is a talent, but then, when he got to the Big 12 and the struggle started, right. Everybody's size and matches athleticism. What you have, we call a bag. What do you have in your bag uh, offense after that. Just Jack
Right.
Reed,
Right.
you know what I mean? So, also, there's not an offensive system to get these guys easy shots or get
Yeah.
shots where they are comfortable. Catlett
Right.
did a great job of, I like the right block, and he found a way to get me there, different kind of ways. Um, in other different ways, other different players, so you just got to, figure out stuff like that, it's tough when your guy who is frustrated about something gets thrown out the game. You can't
Yeah.
do, you
Right.
can't do that. And then are you frustrated because you 1 for 6 or 1 for 7? Because you
Right.
think because you think now you're getting NBA scouts looking at you because you're playing in the Big 12, or
Yeah.
it's someone called me about him, and NBA scouts this and that, but I don't think he's an NBA player. You know what I mean? Like, he
Yeah.
has the ability, but it's something, there's always something not there. But
Right.
that's another story. So are you believing the hype, and now you think you don't have to adhere to everything else everybody else is doing? Jesse
Yeah.
Edwards, watching film of him last year to get a better feel for him. You can't throw it to him and expect him to score like you could throw it to a Hunter Dickerson and just
Right.
he's more of a screen and roll, run the floor, get a lot of plays, offensive rebound, which is good. But that takes away, some Nick, you can't throw it to him. He only have one move, and if he can't go right, what he's going to do. And I think they're taking that away. Matches have
Mhm.
matches physicality. They're taking that away. So it's take they the scouting report now has been shown. In the games you win, you get more scouting report stuff on people, especially when they play well. What they like to do. So now they're taking those things away, and sometimes coaches have to make it easier for them and get them in different spots and help them out, and instead of just create one-on-one stuff.
Yeah. I think another thing, going back to one thing before I forget, I want to mention this. You mentioned the offensive schemes and the sets that they run and that sort of thing. I think one of the big criticisms of Coach Huggins when he was there was the offense. The offensive sets we ran were, they were not very good. I mean, they could have been, I guess, but they just didn't stress certain things in them, screening, that sort of stuff. But I think that's one thing he struggled with, and I think Josh is struggling with the same thing. But I'll say this, one of the stats that stuck out to me from that game was the free throw shooting. I think Oklahoma State was like 22 or 26 or 25, 29, somewhere in that range. We were, 9 for 12 or 8 for 12, something like that. And I thought, we shot, 12 foul shots. That is an indicator to me that we're not taking the ball to the basket. We're not being aggressive with the basketball, and we're not getting to the line. And you don't when you're standing up there, jacking the threes, you don't get to the free throw line nearly as much. And that, to me, a lot of people complain about the officiating, but to me, that's what that tells you is when you see such a disparity in the free throws, it's because you're not attacking the rim. And I think with a team like ours, we got to attack the rim. We got to go and try to draw those fouls and draw people in. It helps your outside shooter so much when you do that as well, because if you start scoring that way, eventually the defense has to try to stop you. And when they try to stop you, then you should have open people to have step in threes. And we just don't seem to get those. We don't get very many of those. And
Yeah, you made a valid point. You made a valid point, because remember when we was winning, I said paint touches.
right,
And the game before they beat Kansas, they shot 50 something threes and 28 of them. I mean, 50 something field goals, and 28 of them was threes. It's the
right,
same thing with this game. So,
yeah,
you shoot, you get 56 field goals. 22 of them are threes. That's too much. And they want to be a 3-point shooting team, and they're not really a 3-point shooting team.
right,
Sumnick was getting in the paint, scoring. They was getting paint touches, throwing it out, open shots. So especially on the road, we don't shoot as good on the road as we shoot at home. You know what I mean?
right,
It gets
right.
Kansas. They was going to the paint, going to the paint, going to the paint, and it was a wonderful thing. And the first thing you said about Huggy's offense. So, two things about Huggy's offense. That 5 out, I don't like it.
Right.
Everybody went to the 5 out. and because Kentucky was doing it. But Kentucky had the top 5 players at each position.
That's right.
So it's easier for them to do it. And I think people forgot when Huggy got here, he had beeline players. He had Kevin Jones, he had the Deshaun Butlers, and those guys could play. They know how to system, they know how to cut, they know how to pass. They were patient. They wasn't greedy on offense. They know how to play with each other. So, it was a different group. But then as they got, got away from those groups, and the offense struggled because there's no creativity. I mean, I used to like the little thing. They throw it to the corner. The guy who throws it to the corner screens at the elbow. He rolls around to the rim, and they throw almost an out of bounds bounce pass and get a layup. They don't have that. No, they don't have that kind of patience. No kind of passers. Everybody's just going, or just shooting. And there's no down screens and back screens. And when they do that kind of stuff, they get easy shots. It's just a combination of a lot of things. And you're not going to shoot free throws, a lot of free throws, if you're shooting jump shots. What I mean? You're not like you said, Greg.
Yep. And you mentioned shooters. I used to have people ask me, "Do you have any 3-point shooters?" I'm like, "Hell, I got a whole team of 3-point shooters. I don't have any 3-point makers. I got plenty of shooters. I just don't have any makers." And I think that's kind of like West Virginia is right now. We have plenty of shooters out there. We just don't have any makers. And I think Kerr had a good game and shot the ball pretty well. Other than him, our outside shooting was not good. And if you're not a great shooting team, again, which I don't think we are, I don't think we create shots on our own for ourselves real well. And that's what they're trying to do, and they're just not being very successful at it. And I think when you struggle like that from the floor, you gotta attack the basket. And right now we're just not doing that. So I think hopefully, again, we still got some time. By tournament time, maybe they can get that stuff ironed out. I don't know if it's going to get any better or not, but they're fight. They play hard. You can't fault their effort. They play hard. They make some crazy mistakes sometimes and are inconsistent. But you can't fault their effort. And I think, as long as the effort's there, eventually they're going to get better. Yeah, I think they'll get better. And I know people will say, well, we've already played whatever we've played, 20 games or whatever. But they still can improve. They haven't played together that much, and I think they can still improve. The whole thing can get better. So I'm hoping get Edwards back in the rotation, everybody get comfortable again. Hopefully we can get on a roll. Hopefully it'll start tonight. I know we're getting a few updates on the score. I haven't seen one for a while, but the Mountaineers are playing right now as we speak. Hopefully we'll get some updates and we can pass those on to you as the night goes on. Darryl, anything else about the basketball before we jump over to football?
I'll be down there Saturday watching the game, so I'll have some fun. I was down there with Catlett the last time. I don't think he's going to be able to make it this time. Prayers to his family, everybody. They need it right now.
Right. And speaking of Catlett and Darryl, there's Darryl with Coach Catlett last week at the game.
Yeah, he didn't see his picture on the wall, so I had to walk around there and show him.
He still looks good. Yeah,
he looks very good. He looks very good.
Yeah,
he looks very good.
I didn't know what Frank was trying to put up there, but that's a nice picture of you guys. You will be back in town this weekend for the game, so guys around, go check Darryl out. He'd be happy to take a picture with you, give you an autograph, whatever you want. Right, Darryl?
Oh yeah.
I'm speaking for you. I shouldn't be saying that.
No, it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. Make me feel important as an old man now.
There you go. That's right. It's not over yet. I told Joe Missoula one time, he and I were talking, and I mentioned to him, I'm like, you know what? When they quit asking you for pictures and autographs, buddy, that means they forgot about you. I said, don't get upset when these people come around wanting autographs and pictures. I said, that's a pretty cool thing for a person like me to see nobody ask me for an autograph ever that I can recall. Unless it was the tickets I got, they had to sign off on them. But anyway, enough of that foolishness. And we wrap up our basketball talk with that, and we'll get ready to focus on some football. And what we're going to do here is we're going to bring Mr. Frank Fear onto the stage with us. Frank, if you want to jump in here and join us. Frank's going to introduce our football guests. He's going to give you the background of these folks, and then he's going to jump on with them, and they're going to talk a little football action. So, Frank, take it away, brother.
Hey, thank you so much, Greg. And it's good to see everybody tonight. And there we go. One of the things we try to do on the show, and we hope we do it well, is not just talk about current affairs, but also talk about, given the subtitle of the show, Then and Now, is talk about the then. And there are some real giants. We know that in Mountaineer football history, basketball history too, of course. And sometimes we know their names really well, and other times we may not. And we're so pleased tonight. Let me bring in Tom Klausing right now, who is the son of Chuck Klausing. And you're going to learn a lot more about Chuck tonight through Tom. And we're very pleased, as Greg said, to have Bob Zitelli, who played at WVU with Coach Klausing. And he's on the phone with us, and he'll be talking in a few minutes. Tom, thank you so much for being with us.
Hi, Frank. Good to be here. Happy to be a part of this. Great.
Super. And I'm going to see if we can bring in Mickey has had some technology problems, but let's see if we can. Are those working out now?
Well, I don't know. How do I sound, Frank? Okay, or you still have the reverberation?
Well, I think it's okay because I was the one that was causing the reverberation, even though it was on your system. I think it's fine.
Okay, wonderful.
Very good.
Hey, Tom, how you doing, Tom? We didn't get a chance to introduce ourselves to each other prior to the show. Sorry about that because of the technical difficulties.
No problem.
But I was just leaving WVU when your dad was, well, he'd been there a year or so by the time I graduated. But I certainly remember him well and the contributions that he made, not only at WVU, but the other parts of his career as he went on in that regard as well. Good to have you on here tonight to talk about him. And it was very meaningful for me just to be associated with him as well as Coach Bowden. I know your dad had a very close relationship with Coach Bowden, but those men really set the mark, set the standard for us to achieve to as we were young, impressionable men back in the 1960s. And I'll forever be grateful for, the example that they set for us and the mentoring they did for us as we were going through our early adulthood stages.
Yep, no question about that. And, one of the things that Tommy and I have talked about is when you think about greatness, it's not just an internal thing, but it's also the external affirmation. And the amazing thing that Tom and I have talked about is that on that 1970 staff, Coach Klausing came to WVU from Indiana University of Pennsylvania, where he was the head coach. And on that 1970 staff, the first year for Bobby Bowden, there were three coaches on that staff who are now in the College Hall of Fame. Tom, that to me is just absolutely amazing.
Yes, I think you'd have to even question whether Alabama had three College Football Hall of Fame coaches on their staff at any one time. So I think that's a really remarkable thing that West Virginia was able to over that time frame of 1970 to 1975, have those three individuals, my dad, Coach Bowden, and Coach Signetti, on the coaching staff.
Yeah, and the amazing thing is that your dad went in first. You can see that graphic. Chuck went in 1998. And I'm going to show a graphic in a few seconds that we'll pause and talk about. I knew he was a great coach and had a terrific history. But when I put it all together, I was absolutely blown away. He still is an icon in Pennsylvania because of the impact he had, not only at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, but also at Carnegie Mellon later. And in fact, Bob Zitelli will talk about his son playing at Carnegie Mellon, not for Chuck Klausing. But the fact of the matter is he had an incredible career, and he went in before Bobby Bowden, who went in 10 years later, and then finally Frank Signetti. And it's just amazing. And here's the graphic that I was talking about. Went into the College Hall of Fame class of 1998. He started his collegiate career at Penn State and then finished up at Slippery Rock, legendary Slippery Rock. But if you look at his high school career as a head coach, It is nothing short of extraordinary. Isn't good enough. I mean, look at that. His teams won 6 consecutive Western Pennsylvania championships at both Pitcairn and Braddock. And look at that 1959, 54 to 59. His teams didn't lose a game. They tied 1 game over the 6-year period. And then when I looked at his college career, Tommy, everywhere he went, the teams won. He started with Rutgers as an assistant under John Bateman. That team went 8-1. Then he went to Army under Paul Dietzel for several years. Those teams were 19-11. He was with Bobby Bowden for the entire time. Bobby was in Morgantown, 70 to 75. Those teams went 42-26, 62% wins. And then later in his career, he went to Pitt under Mike Gottfried, and that team was 5-1. And if you look at what your dad did as a college head coach, those numbers just are eye-popping. At Indiana University, before he came to WVU, from 64 to 69, and then Carnegie Mellon after he left WVU from 76 to 85. And you can see he won 124 games as a head coach, 25 losses, 2 ties, 82% wins, played in the NCAA playoffs 4 times, made the championship semifinals twice, and made 1 bowl appearance, and was named College Coach of the Year twice in 79 and 83. And he played a variety of roles at West Virginia. He was assistant head coach the entire time. Then he became defensive coordinator the last several years, but he was also special teams coach. He was defensive ends coach. I mean, it took me 7 minutes, I think, to say all of that, Tom. Talk about your dad and the incredible career that he had.
Well, a couple of things that come to mind when you went over that. The West Point days, back then in the early 1960s, the West Point job was a really, really significant job in the coaching world. Vince Lombardi had been coach at West Point in the 1950s before he went on to be the coordinator at the New York Giants, and then went on to the Green Bay Packers. Everyone wanted to coach at West Point. Unfortunately, in our 3 years there, Dad lost the Navy 3 times, and everything comes down to playing Army Navy, as you can imagine. But we did beat Penn State each of those 3 years, so I like to point that out. And then you mentioned Dad's overall record as a college head coach. He retired as the 19th winningest coach based on winning percentage in NCAA history. And individuals around 2021 were names like Bob Devaney at Nebraska, Barry Switzer at Oklahoma, and the likes of that. So he's still around in the top 25 because other coaches have come on. And this is all divisions 1, 2, and 3 right now. But to still have him ranked that high among the history of all college coaches, we're very proud of. And I speak on behalf of just not myself, but my oldest sister, Patty, and older sister, Mary Lou. Mary Lou attended WVU and graduated. My younger sisters, Nancy and Kathy, also attended West Virginia. So we're very proud of my dad's accomplishments.
Yeah. You know, Tom and I have been exchanging stories. And I've been taking them from Mickey. You'll be interested in this one, I think, in particular. Evidently, Bobby Bowden and your dad got familiar together by going to conferences, football conferences. And somehow they struck this deal. The first part of the deal became reality. The second part of the deal didn't become reality for an obvious reason. But tell that story about how Chuck came to work under Bobby, because Bobby wanted him badly when he was named head coach.
Well, yes. So coaches love to attend clinics and conventions and get to know each other, exchange ideas and the like. And Dad and Coach Bowden got to know each other. My dad being from Western Pennsylvania, Coach Bowden from Alabama. they got to know each other through these conventions, these clinics, and they promised each other whoever got the first head coaching job, he would hire the other one as his assistant head coach for $1 less. So when Coach Bowden got the job at West Virginia in 1970, 1969, actually, maybe, when Jim Carlin left to go to South Carolina, he called my dad and offered the job and said, Chuck, are you willing to come to Morgantown? I'll pay you $1 less than I'm making. I'm not making a whole lot as a head coach in 1970, but I'll pay you $1 less. And Dad was ready to move on and from Indiana, and was happy to join Coach Bowden's staff. So they enjoyed five or six 6 years, successful years at West Virginia, 2 Peach Bowl appearances. And then after the 1975 season, Dad had already committed to go into Carnegie Mellon. Dad had already been a head coach for most of his career and wanted to get back into head coaching. Coach Bowden subsequently took the Florida State job and went on to do great things down at Florida State. And I think history shows that Coach Bowden was the first coach to get the first $1 million contract of all head coaches in the country while he was at Florida State. And my dad picked up the phone and called him up and said, Bobby, I'm ready to join you for $1 less. And they had a good laugh about that.
Mickey, do you have questions you want to ask? And then we'll bring Bob Zatelli in to talk about his experience with Coach Klausing as a player. You had graduated, Mickey, but I'm sure you have questions for Tommy.
I had, when he came in as he came in as a defensive coordinator his first year, right? He was in charge totally of the defense, or was he assistant head coach?
He was assistant head coach. He was the recruiting coordinator throughout his time there, and he was a special teams coach. I think Hayden Buckley was the defensive coordinator, Frank Signetti, the offensive coordinator, and then Hayden Buckley left around the 1973 or so season, and Coach Bowden asked my dad to take over the defense at that time. So then my dad was the defensive coordinator in 74, 75, maybe 73 through 75.
You know, at that point in time, WVU was recruiting a number of young men out of the Big 33 Western Pennsylvania Athletic Conference, as well as high school athletes from West Virginia. And I would imagine your dad had quite a bit of knowledge of the talent that was available in that area when he came to WVU, which contributed even more to, I mean, Bob Zatelli came out of that geography as well. And those were some of the best players, even in my day when I was there, some of the most competitive, talented players that you'll find anywhere in the nation. So he had to do really well at recruiting coming right out of that backyard, I would think, huh?
Correct. He had been the head coach at Indiana of Pennsylvania, and so he got to know the high school coaches in Western Pennsylvania at the time. And so I think that's why Coach Bowden saw him as an attractive hire, is based on his relationships that he had with the high school coaches in Western Pennsylvania. And, I think West Virginia did fairly well recruiting Western Pennsylvania at the time, which was really important to be competitive with the Pitts and the Penn States.
Yeah, that Big 33 Western Pennsylvania High School Athletic Conference must have been something. There were some really great athletes. Mike Sherwood came out of that in the high school he went to, McKees Rocks, right? Did Sherwood go? No. Was it McKees Rocks that Sherwood went to? Went to the same high school I know that Joe Namath went to.
Yeah, he went to Joe Namath went to Beaver Falls. Yes.
Yeah, so did Mike Sherwood. Yeah.
Bel Air.
Yeah,
Ohio. He was on the other side of the river, but essentially in the same recruiting area. I mean,
right.
Eastern Ohio, Western Pennsylvania, just terrific.
One name from the 70 to 75 in Western Pennsylvania that I'm thinking about is Chuck Smith. He was a defensive tackle. Went to Ringgold High School, if I remember correctly, and his quarterback on his team was a quarterback that went on to play for the San Francisco 49ers by the name of Joe Montana. And so Chuck was a great defensive player in the early 1970s at West Virginia and in Pennsylvania.
Absolutely. Hey, Mickey and Tommy, we've got Bob. Are you there? You've been listening, I hope.
Yeah, I'm right here. I'm listening to the conversation, and my mind's going a mile a minute. Yeah.
Can you guys hear Bobby? Okay.
Sure.
Can you hear him? Okay. Good. Okay,
Yeah.
Bob. Why don't you introduce yourself, and then if you could talk about your experiences, not only with Coach Klausing when he was at WVU, but he's still an icon in Western Pennsylvania, and Bob Zatelli still lives there, and so and had a son who played at Carnegie Mellon. So, Bob, the floor is yours.
Okay, Tom, I want to ask you, where are you living right now?
I currently live in the Washington, D.C. area in North Potomac, Maryland. After I graduated from West Virginia and Carnegie Mellon, I have worked in the federal government most of my career and now work for one of the largest school districts in the country in suburban Maryland.
Well, first of all, I wanted to say something directly to you. Your father had a great impact on so many, not only players, but students of his for such a long period of time. And I was thinking of what I wanted to convey to you. And, I was born and raised in McKees Rocks, and I still live in McKees Rocks. But I want to convey to you that one of the greatest legacies is how highly regarded by players your father was long after our careers are over, as well as your father's. What we learned from Coach, and there's also Coach Bond and a few others, has remained in us all these years. I'll be 75 in March. But the things that we learned were carried on to our children and grandchildren. So the impact, yes, is true. It goes far beyond the gridiron. Your father was a well-respected man. We loved him. We had special teams. Your dad kind of helped Coach Biden with special teams. He was very demanding. But the one thing we always remember was when things got a little testy, he always said, "Take a knee. I got a story to tell you." And one of the stories he told us, we had a punter. It was a great punter, Thad Cucciarelli, and Thad was really getting the ball up and far, and we were covering well. And he told us the story. He said, "I actually saw the longest punt in football history."
I know the story.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah. So he said, "I saw the longest punt in football history." You know the area, Pitcairn and Wilmerding in that area, the football fields in Western Pennsylvania. Probably 9 out of the 10 fields are right next to the low ground by the railroad tracks. The mills were going hot and heavy, and everybody Friday nights came on, the lights roaring all over Western PA. And they all said, "Well, how far did the ball go, Coach?" And he says, "Well, the young man punted the ball, and it ended up in the back of the hopper car on the railroad tracks. The train was on its way to Altoona." So, we all got a charge out of that, especially me growing up in McKees Rocks. I said I'm familiar with the territory. But he was a mentor to us, and treated us as young men should be. I had great respect for him. I know his record as a coach here. A lot of the young coaches coming in. I think your dad might have been in his late 20s when he started at Pitcairn. And, what a remarkable career he had on a high school level. You know, I got another story. You probably never heard this one, and I'm not going to mention which one of your sisters. Okay. I had the opportunity to date one of your sisters, and
be careful, Bob. They're all watching right now.
Yeah. I'm sure they are. I don't know if they remember this one or not, but I think we spent a little too much time at my Delta Tau Delta fraternity house, and we got in a little bit late that particular Saturday. But at practice, I don't know if it was Monday or Tuesday at practice, your dad came up to me after practice. He said, "Hey, Bob," he said, "I need to have a talk with you." I said, "Oh, yeah, Coach, what is it?" He said, "Look, my daughter has a curfew just like you do." He said, "If she's not in on time, we got a problem." So that ended the story. So I stopped and think about that. And, the main thing was that he talked to you like a man. There was no fooling around. He was to the point. You knew exactly where you stood in his eyes, and not to disrespect anyone, of his stature. I know that when he left Pitt and West Virginia and went to Carnegie Mellon, I had a younger son, Nick, who played at Purdue, and after a year, he transferred back to Carnegie Mellon and played for Rich Lackner there. And I was we went to one of the homecoming games. My son Nick played linebacker for Rich, and family, we went up to one of the games. So I'm going into Gessling Stadium there, and I'm usually sat up by the press box on that top row there where we could get a good vantage point. And lo and behold, I see your father sitting there. And I said, "Coach," I said, "Bob Zatelli from West Virginia." He said, "I was reading the program and I saw that last name on there and watched the warm-ups." And he said, "Your kid moves a lot faster than you did." So we had a good chuck. We had a good day. We sat together, talked about the ball game, and talked about our days together. And I often think about him often because of certain situations you run into, and how they react. And he had spoke to us often about life's lessons. And one particular quote I remember from your father telling us that when you're in doubt, always do the right thing. So that never left me. He was a great person. He ran his practices great, kept tabs on us, academically, to make sure that we, kept our nose to the grindstone and doing what we were supposed to do. I know he was a military veteran, second lieutenant, serving in a Pacific theater during World War II. And he commanded great respect from us because he was such a great man, far and beyond coaching, Tom. We loved your father as well as Coach Biden because of what they taught us to carry through the rest of our lives. How are your sisters doing?
They're all doing well. One lives in Indiana, Pennsylvania. Another lives in Florida, but she's moving to Myrtle Beach. And then the third lives in the Myrtle Beach area as well. So two of the three are down south. Bob, a couple things you mentioned. One was Dad starting his career at Pitcairn High School. Pitcairn's a really tiny little town, coal town. They're nicknamed the Railroaders. As you pointed out, the railroad car going by, the football field, bleachers on only one side, the railroad tracks. And so the Railroaders, the workers at the railroad would come watch the games on the other side of the field between the field and the tracks. Dad went there coming out of college as a first-year coach. So he was like 21, 22 years old at the time. The head coach decides to go somewhere else. I think Dad was the only other coach. So he was thrust into head coaching at the age of either 21 or 22. And I think his military background, as you pointed out, he was a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps in World War II. And I think that helped him prepare himself to be a successful football coach. And I think the rigors of being a Marine led well into his coaching.
Oh, well, without a doubt. Without a doubt. You know, your dad was firm but fair. You know, we spent we got a dose of it actually twice there in Morgantown. We had another coach who was ex-Marine guy, Coach Tippett. So, you know, that's just the way it was. You know, I got there in '66. I left there in '72 after student teaching. And, but, you know, those things, those carryovers are so important today. You know, we don't even have to get into this discussion about, you know, what's going on in college sports today. I already know that's a Frank's alley there with, you know, what's happening with college athletics. But, you know, I as I said, you know, I often think of your father, and you know, I know he's in a better place. One thing that I didn't realize was talking to him up to Carnegie Mellon. I said, "What are you doing in your spare time, Coach?" He said, "I sing in my church choir." So I didn't know that, and I said, "Well, what a great thing for him to do at his age." And I also, he told me, I didn't know this either, that I know after he finished his coaching, I want to say it was in the 90s or so, he coached the school for the deaf. I don't know if it was around Pittsburgh or it was elsewhere, but I think he coached for a while. I can't remember the name of the academy or the school.
Was it Gallaudet University? Bob? Do you recall?
No, I don't know if it was Gallaudet or not.
I think it was at the high school level.
High school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Every time I see that AT&T commercial with the new football helmets for the deaf people, if my dad could have seen that, he would be so happy to see how far technology has come to allow deaf football players to be able to communicate like that with their coaches. I think that's terrific.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think your father was more to coach, Tom. I really do.
You know, and one of the things that my dad had, you know, a really sharp mind. He lived to almost 92, passed away about 5 years ago. And one thing in his sharp mind that he could remember, there he is with me at his retirement home. If he ran into a former football player at West Virginia, at Carnegie Mellon, even not his high school players, but any of the college players, he would remember what high school they went to and what their high school coach's name was. That's how sharp his mind was all the way to the end. That's him as a center. He played at 155 pounds. He was a starting center at Penn State during the war years at 155 pounds. So that's pretty remarkable. And so then the war ended and he went on to finish his career at Slippery Rock. That's the 1970 coaching staff. If you look at the names across the bottom, Hayden Buckley on the bottom left, Joe Pendry, who went on to have a great career in the NFL, Coach Bowden, of course, Phil Callicutt, the trainer, Frank Signetti in the back row on the left, Lyde Huggins, Jim Sam Gillespie, Garrett Ford, Jerry Bruner. I know you all know Coach Young, and then my dad was that first coaching staff at West Virginia.
And a lot of people.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, guys, one of the things that we need to remember is that when a coach leaves, as Jim Carlin did, and by the way, Jim Carlin has been nominated several times for the College Hall of Fame too. If he's inducted, that makes 4, which is just mind-blowing. Is that he took many of the coaches left WVU to follow Jim Carlin to Texas Tech, where he went. And so really, Bobby Bowden had a chance to put together a new staff. And a number of those coaches you're seeing on the screen were new. And there are always issues when you're putting together a new staff. And I think that's why he wanted your dad as an assistant head coach, because that was a new role. Because it really was not starting over, because your dad made it very clear. You and I today were talking about the acceptance speech that Bobby Bowden gave at the Mountaineer in 1969 when he got the head coaching job, very late 69, early 70. He was very much into continuity. Let's keep it going. We just won the Peach Bowl, but it took transitions are always that. They're transitions. We've got more pictures here, Bob, we're showing. Now, I don't know where this is from, Tommy. Is this high school?
Yes. So this was probably one of my dad's last years at Braddock. They, as you mentioned, they won 6 straight WPIAL championships. And so this is probably after, I think, the 1959 season that ended with the last of the 6 championships. Dad has a ND hat on, and he was not a Notre Dame fan per se, but someone had given that hat to him to wear because the ND stood for no defeats. And so basically that was his,
That's great.
record at Braddock. Here he is. Like I said earlier, that he had been a defensive coach at West Point under a couple coaches. One was Paul Dietzel, who had coached LSU to the national championship in, I believe, 1959 or so, and came to coach at West Point. And so my dad was at West Point with Coach Dietzel. And again, I'm proud to say we beat Penn State 3 years in a row.
One of the few teams in WVU's history, the only team that can probably say that, Tom, huh?
Right.
Winning 3 in a row. You know, you mentioned Paul Dietzel there. Just a little coincidence here. When your dad was coaching under him at West Point, he went on. When we played South Carolina in the Peach Bowl in 1969, Paul Dietzel was their head coach.
Right. It's a small world, isn't it?
Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
So here's a picture from the sidelines in 1975. I know that's Coach George Henshaw with the sunglasses just behind my dad, and Mike Working, I think, with the nice mustache and the sunglasses on the right. So I'm not sure what game that was, but I think I sent you a few pictures from WVU sidelines.
And here's another one with George. There's George Henshaw.
That's him again too. I can just imagine what my dad is doing or saying right there. Dad used that picture on the cover of one of the 2 books that were written about him. And that book is titled Never Lost a Game, Time Just Ran Out.
Great. I love this picture right here.
So there's a little story behind this. I think this is 1956 in our living room. Braddock had just won, I guess, the 3rd championship in a row. I was in the hospital, in Children's Hospital at the time, with a kidney disease. And so the football team signed that football. And so that's Dad and me on the couch at home. I still have the football in the bookcase behind me.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And here's a picture that's on his 2nd book. I'm not here to promote my dad's books, but another book titled Striking Gridiron, which a movie producer has bought the rights to, about his Braddock days, and is hoping to turn it into a movie. It's a picture of a couple Braddock players. The one on the left is Joe Reeves. And Dad, I'd always ask Dad, who is the best player you ever coached as a head coach? And so that would be the Braddock, IUP, and the Carnegie Mellon days in Pitcairn. Well, Dad would say it's really tough to choose. It's hard to choose, like Sophie's Choice, who's the best. But he would say Joe Reeves is on the left. He was a running back. And then the other player in the middle, I think, is Johnny Morenzi. And so that was his backfield at Braddock at the time. And then here's a picture of his last Braddock team, 1959. And a couple of those players got college scholarships. The quarterback, number 19 in the middle, John Jacobs. In the back row was a freshman or sophomore, Kenny Reeves, who went on to play for the Atlanta Falcons. But this was the last of the 6 undefeated teams, and for which the movie is being written about.
Incredible. Here's one that will recognize everybody there. I'm not sure who the person on the left is, but there's Senator Byrd with Bobby Bowden and your dad. Talk about that picture.
I think the coach on the left is Hayden Buckley. And,
yes, that's right. Thank you.
And so I think early on, after Coach Bowden got appointed as head coach, the 3 coaches made a trip to Washington, D.C. to visit the senator from West Virginia, Senator Byrd. And so this picture was taken during that visit.
And then here's the staff, 1970 staff again, without Bobby. But again, 2 Hall of Fame coaches in that picture. I mean, I always say, and actually I don't say it, Mickey says it all the time, it's a great day to be a Mountaineer, but you can take pride in the fact that here we are. Look at that picture from 1972 Hall of Fame coaches.
So this picture is taken up at St. Vincent's College in Latrobe. The coaches would always like to go up to visit the Steelers at preseason training camp. There's an NFL Hall of Famer in that picture, believe it or not. And that individual's on the right. His name is Bill Nunn, who was a player personnel specialist in the Steeler front office. And he's now in the NFL Hall of Fame. He went in a couple years ago. And then the other fella, the individual on the far left, is Dick Hale. His son was the Steelers offensive coordinator a few years ago.
And Tom, is that Joe Pendry, the third one in from the left there?
Yes, it was.
I thought it was. You know, Joe went on to have a heck of a career in the NFL. He was with the Buffalo Bills as their offensive coordinator for years and years and years. And he, I'm surprised he didn't end up in a Hall of Fame himself, or may one of these days.
Right. And there were 2 other coaches. Alex Gibbs was in that 1975 picture. Alex Gibbs went on to be a guru of offensive lines in the NFL and at a few organizations. And then the other was George Henshaw, who I know coached at the Tennessee Titans and some other NFL teams. So again, really, really great coaches from the 1970s.
There's our good friend Mark Parsons. Remember your dad as a DC at WVU. That 1975 season was a great one. And, Bob, you wanted to get in. Did you want to comment here? I want to make sure, because you couldn't see the pictures that were up. The photos are up. Do you have a question or a comment?
I got a quick life lesson from Coach Klausing that when he first came on board there in Morgantown. Not to be disrespectful, but this is a life lesson. We didn't have many African Americans on our team, and by 1970, the number of players of color were on our roster. At the time, we practiced out at Hawley Field, site of where the current Coliseum is. That was our practice field. So Old Mountaineer Stadium, they had a few buses where the players had to get on. I believe maybe 3 or 4 buses. They would take the whole crew out, the coaches, the players, so on and so forth. And each bus had a coach assigned to them. And you knew you got on a certain bus, you had a certain seat. We get on, Coach Klausing, I was on a bus with Coach Klausing and the rest of my teammates, and the bus didn't even take off. And Coach Klausing starts pointing, you switch seats with him. So he started integrating the way that we were supposed to seat. And then we had one white, one person of color, one African American. And he said, from now on, when you fellas get on a bus, this is how we're going to go to practice, and this is how we're going to come back to practice. Okay. So if you remember then the late 60s, very early 70s, it was a very turbulent time in American history. And the lessons, as I said early on when I first said hello, there were lessons to be learned far beyond the gridiron for us. You know, being born and raised in the Keys Rocks, I wasn't growing up in an atmosphere where color played a role in the way that we went to school together, socialized with one another, and your father kind of reinforced that, not only for me, but probably for the 60 or 70 other guys that we were all playing ball together. Played a huge impact in us coming together as a team. I'm sure Mickey will allude to that as well. And that's something that we all had to work with, because we were all from different places of the country. We had different customs, different traditions, that these coaches were able to bring it all together, so to speak. And that was a life lesson, Tom, you know, for all of us. So, you know, I just wanted to pass that on to you, my friend.
Before maybe Mickey, you speak, could I mention that when my dad was at Pitcairn and looking for that next head coaching job, he knew a couple towns over, the Braddock community was looking for a football coach. He thought Braddock was a sleeping giant in terms of high school athletics. And so he went to Braddock and he looked at the team from the previous year, and it's like mostly all white, but the student body is 50% white, 50% black. And he asked the black players, why don't you go out for football? We could really use you. And one of the players said, oh, we don't go out because we would get hazed. And my dad then pulled those white kids together and said, there'll be no hazing while I'm the head coach here at this high school. And if you go back and look at that picture again from the 1959 team, where the team my dad inherited in 54 was mostly all white, it was half white and half black in 1959, representing the student body.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that really comes home to me, and it's the reason we wanted to feature you, Tommy, and your dad in this program, is everything we talked about tonight is exactly what collegiate athletics, intercollegiate athletics was designed to be way back at the time when they were introduced in higher education in the 19th century. We've gotten away from that. But these are, you know, your dad was the kind of person, and I know that we're going to bring Greg on here to be involved in the conversation. Everything that you know, we want coaches to be if we have sons or daughters who are playing for coaches. And it's just, and I see Kathy Fair just said, yeah, wow, amazing. Because we can go back, we have to go back to those days. We can't have this cheating and other kinds of things that are going on, and the incredible focus on money. And what tonight, what it does for me is just emphasizes just so emphatically what college football and college sports are supposed to be. And I know you as a coach, Greg, this is the kind of person you were when you coached. And so to me, it's just incredible. And we're going to do this again next week and when we continue this series. But your thoughts, Greg, in terms of what you've heard.
Well, I know when you hear these stories, you hear them talk about these fellows. That's one of the joys that all this has brought me in getting to know you, Frank, and Mickey, and Bob, and all these other guys, Charlie Fisher, and on and on and on. Is the stories you hear, you realize what kind of folks these people were, and it's just amazing. And those stories are so interesting to hear. But you see that they are people, and that their heart, they have heart, and they have compassion, and they have morality, and all those things. And that's what makes it so much fun to interact like this. Getting to meet Tom and hearing these stories about his father, just amazing. And I'm not going to lie, Of course, I'm not near as old as you guys are. I'll get this straight. But I don't, I don't remember him. Obviously, I was alive then and watching Mountaineer football, but I don't remember him. But it's so interesting to hear the stories and to know the connection with Coach Bowden, and again, just to hear Bob talk about him and the love that they had for him. Obviously, he shared that back with them and taught those life lessons. It is truly just fascinating. It's so interesting. And I agree with you, Frank. We need to get back there. That is why, one of the reasons why when we talk about our current situation here at WVU, our current coach, I like our current coach. And one of the reasons I like him is he's a good person, and you can tell that. And, I think that's, we need to get back to that. And I think a lot of places don't have that now. And not that they're horrible people or anything, but they do get involved in cheating and those type of things and other stuff. And you don't hear that here. And I think because of what the foundation was built upon back in the 60s and the 70s, that's why we're like we are today. You don't hear about WVU going on probation and getting penalized by the NCAA and all these types of things. And I think a lot could be said for those guys that came before the ones we had now. That's where the foundation was laid. And I appreciate being able to listen to all this.
We have maybe a few more stories before we wrap it up here, Greg. One of the things about Coach Klausing, he was, when we think about the money in sports today, he was understated. Could you tell the story about Old White?
So that was the name of the car that my dad had gotten at West Virginia. All the coaches on the staff were given the opportunity to get a dealer car from one of the dealers in the Morgantown area, brand new shiny car. My dad was given the option, you can have a dealer car or you can have this car that's a state of West Virginia car. But the good thing about it is it comes with a fuel card. So you won't have to use your own money to buy gas for your car. And my dad, said, hey, I've got 5 kids, a couple of them don't make college. That sounds like a pretty good deal. So this old Chevy was known as Old White. Dad would often have to go out in the morning and open up the carburetor and spray something in there to start it up. But it got him to work. He used it on recruiting trips. And he and I even took an adventurous trip down in 1975, I believe, to New Orleans to see the Steelers play in their first Super Bowl with it.
Yeah. And,
I have a question.
Sure.
I have a question about one of the stories, some of the things I was reading, and it made me laugh because I coached middle school football for a while, about 10 years. And I did it because it was just a blast. It was so fun coaching those young kids. I was a high school basketball coach for years, but I had in that middle school, we call it the Lonesome Polecat. I think in the story I read here, it was the Muddle Huddle, maybe, and where you put all the linemen and backs over on one side of the field when you go for 2, and you leave your center and your kicker or your quarterback over here by themselves. I actually won a game doing that when I was reading the story. I was laughing because I did that when I was coaching middle school football. I don't know where I saw it, but I did it. And
that's a great story.
Every middle. I saw that. I was reading that today, and I got so tickled when I read it. I thought that's great.
Well, I think Coach Bowden was the king of the trick plays, and I think my dad might have been, if not number 1, number 2 or 3. He loved them too.
The officials, when I was going to middle school football, they would always come over, and I knew most of these guys who officiated the middle school games. They would come to me before the game, and they'd be like, "All right,
yeah,
what are you going to do tonight?" Because I always pulled out.
If we have time for another story, could I tell
Absolutely.
it? Sure.
Absolutely.
So I think it was 1970. The coaching staff, like I said, had gone up to visit with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then what they did was they went over to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, Dickinson College, where the Washington Redskins were training. And the head coach at the time was Vince Lombardi. And so But Vince Lombardi ran a really tight ship at training camp, whereas at the Steeler camp, the college coaches could go down on the field and intermix with the pro coaches and watch practice very, right up and close. But at Dickinson College, Vince Lombardi had all the visiting college coaches sit up in the bleachers. And so they got to Dickinson. A couple of the West Virginia coaches with my dad said, this isn't what we want. Let's go over to East Stroudsburg, where the Philadelphia Eagles are practicing, and we can be treated better. So my dad said, no, I'm going to stick around. I want to learn from Coach Lombardi. So even if it's from the bleachers, I'm gonna stay here. You guys go over to the Philadelphia area. So Dad, being a Catholic, saw a sign up in the dormitory where the coaches would get to stay right with the players and the Redskin coaches. Catholic Mass, 6:15 a.m. And so Dad, the next morning, being a good Catholic, goes to Mass, and he's the only one in the dorm room where the priest is going to give Mass. 1 minute before the Mass starts, Vince Lombardi walks in, and Vince Lombardi serves as the altar boy for the priest. And so it's just the priest, Vince Lombardi, and my dad at this morning Mass. And so that really struck a chord with Coach Lombardi. And so Coach Lombardi let my dad down on the field. My dad was riding with Coach Lombardi in his golf cart around the campus. So the West Virginia coaches come back to pick up my dad, and they said, Coach Chuck, how are you down in the field? How are you with Coach Lombardi? And my dad asked them, did you go to Mass this morning?
I think hearing these stories like this, everyone I hear, I think I want to read these books. I bet these books are full of good stuff. And speaking of the books, won't you go ahead and tell us the names, how you get them? I mean, there's some of us who like to read that.
Yeah, I'm going to reach over. I happen to have both of them right here.
Awesome.
Like I said, this one has him on the West Virginia sidelines. We saw that picture earlier. And this is really a book about all his time, including time at the high school and college, and then certainly West Virginia. And then this is the book, Striking Gridiron, that is written about his 1959 Braddock team that a movie producer bought the rights to, and hopefully is going to make a movie. He's even spoken to different actors who might play my dad. We've seen a script of the movie, so it's really fun to read.
Wow. Great.
Wow, that's awesome. That's fantastic.
That's
Well, listen, before we sign off for the night, Frank, I'll give you one last word, and then we'll pass it on to Mickey. And then before we go, let Tom speak one more time before we get off, before we run out of time. So go ahead, Frank.
Let me forfeit my time. Bob, before you leave us, any final comments you want to make?
No, it's always a pleasure. I appreciate you inviting me in on a conversation. Certainly very interesting, and I thoroughly enjoyed having an opportunity to talk with Tom. Please give my best to your family, Tom. I wish you well. And Greg, thank you very much. Thank you, Frank, and my brother Mickey Plumley. Take care of yourself, my brother, and let's go Mountaineer Nation. Always well. Take care, my friends. I'm going to sign off, Frank. My granddaughter's basketball game out in Sacramento, California is going to be streamed here at 8:30.
Wow.
There you go.
All right, Bob.
Get the jumper cables on and tune in to the Italians.
There you go.
She gets a couple. Every time she hits a three-pointer, costs me a $10 bill. What can I say?
Thank you for being here, Bob. You take care, buddy.
I'm going to sign off, fellas. Take care. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Mickey, anything you'd like to wrap up with?
Well, just really appreciate you coming on with us tonight, Tom, and talking about your dad. Some great stories. A lot of similarities. If you've ever seen the movie Remember the Titans, when I think about your dad, I think about that movie, and I think about that era that we all played in, and very appropriate discussion. I think about the times of integration, particularly appropriate with Black History Month starting tomorrow on February the 1st, that we'd be discussing topics like this. Tonight it was a time of upheaval and a time of a lot of stress in the world. But, when you look at college football and high school football, it's, as you said, Greg, it's a microcosm of the entire world. And it's a shining example of how much better the world could do if things were approached the way that our coaches had us approach lives at a very young age. I'll just finish with, I had the basketball score pegged here while we were talking, Greg, and the Mountaineers are up 35-32 with a little under 16 minutes to go. So let's hope they hold on here in the second half. Don't ever forget, it's a great day to be a Mountaineer, no matter where you may be.
Absolutely. Yep. Mountaineers were down at halftime, but they are up now 35-32. So again, Tom, we can't tell you how much we appreciate it and how much we enjoyed the stories about your father. Fascinating and interesting. Just great stuff to hear. We really do appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us.
It was my pleasure. I'm going to be a frequent watcher on your shows ahead.
Well, you may end up being a frequent guest, so be careful. Because we do like to call people back, especially when we feel like we don't have enough time. We'll get you back on here. Maybe we can get some other players and some more insights into it. That'd be a lot of fun. So again, thank you so much.
Love to do it. And I've got a few names I could offer to you down the road that might be of interest to you.
Absolutely. Again, thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. Very interesting tonight. I want to mention real quick, we've already got our show set up for next week, so we'll go ahead and tell you about that. We're kind of going to keep in the same frame. Molly Ann Carlin Elliott will be here with us. That, of course, is Jim Carlin's daughter. Jim Carlin, of course, who spent some time at WVU, will be with us. And Ken Juskowicz, who was a place kicker who played for Carlin and was a good friend of the family's up until Jim Carlin passed. We'll have Ken on as well to talk about those days, the thens, and we look forward to that. So we hope everybody will join us. Frank, any last thoughts before we sign off?
No, you did, as always, terrific job. Appreciate it, and thanks to fans for watching.
All right, good deal. Mickey?
That's it. Good night, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Again, give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. We hope you enjoyed the show tonight, and we look forward to coming to you again next Wednesday with another great one on the Mountaineer Locker Room then and now. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks, Rick.